Hey everyone, welcome back to the Product Pivot. I'm Santi with my awesome co-host Megan, and I'm so excited because we have our friend and partner John with us. We're going to be chatting about some stuff, but before I flip it over to him for an introduction, I'll just recap what this podcast is all about. We share real stories from folks in the product and tech space on their journeys, their careers, things they've learned, insights, and all that fun stuff. And again, I'm just so stoked that John's with us. He is a partner with Portfolio, and we're going to flip it over to him and let him do an introduction.
Yeah, Santi, Megan, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So, John Fontenot, where do I start? I work out of Utah. I'm from Louisiana originally, so brought some of that Cajun flair over to the blandness of Utah. But no, it's great here. It's actually this really hidden gem of a tech hub. I was just talking to a friend about this before I hopped on the podcast, and it's pretty cool. It's been fun and really unexpected. But what I do, I'm on a bit of a sabbatical from work right now. So I'm kind of working through my next thing, I'm working on a book. It's going to be called the not the go-to-market gap. We changed it. It's the product market gap is what it's going to be called. Go-to-market gap was trademarked. We couldn't do that. But yeah, so product market gap is going to be coming hopefully end of this year, early 2027. So stay tuned for that. I'm the founder of Path2Product, which is a partner with Portfolio. And what we focus on is helping aspiring PMs get hands-on experience to get a leg up in getting their first PM job. We know it's hard out there. And without having some kind of experience, it's really hard. So we try to bridge that gap. And then the partnership is really helping transition from, you're building a portfolio as part of your projects, but once you actually get into PM, like it's not the right fit for the type of product portfolios that you're supposed to have. So we help you transition to portfolio to have a long-term portfolio experience. So it's kind of a cool natural synergy from let's help you get a job and let's help you show off what you're doing in your job kind of thing. If I summarize that well, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
It was great.
No, I think you summarized it great. I think that was one of the most amazing things about like learning what you do because I think Santi and I, like when we started talking with so many people interested in transitioning to product management, is why we started this podcast. It's because we were just so inspired by so many people wanting to break into product management. And we were just so inspired by the energy and the excitement around product management, but the lack of resources.
mm,
And so we really wanted to help keep that inspiration alive and less of the, oh, well, you need experience. Oh, you need this. Oh, you need that. And more of a like, here's how you can do that. So I guess, John, I would put that a little bit back on you. Can you share a little bit about your journey breaking into product management for our listeners?
yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit by accident, a little bit intentional. Most people who are in product accidentally got into product, right? There's a very small percentage who intentionally tried to get in, and those people who are having a heck of a time trying, which is the problem that we try to solve. But long story short, when I moved here from Louisiana, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just like, I met this woman, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to figure it out as we go. And ended up like after a year here, fell into a contract role for Intel doing software partnerships. And that's where I discovered product management because I was trying to convince product managers, hey, I know you have this great roadmap. But so I was the annoying one on the other side, trying to convince them to change the roadmap and say, but Intel's got this great technology that can make your product better. This is how it impacts the customer. Can we get it on the roadmap? And we'll like give you some GTM funds and we'll do some co-marketing. That was like my whole job. Super fun and had this like pivot moment where I kind of vicariously fell in love with what product managers did, kind of saw how they were at the intersection of finance and go to market and like development. I'm like, that's really cool. But I could move to California and go work directly for Intel and like take off the contract label and be like full time. And the wife was like, I don't want to leave Utah. So I was like, product management it is. And so actually I was fortunate to have like several clients who were directors of product and whatnot who kind of mentored me, but like 100 applications later, a few recruiters giving feedback later, you're like, look, you're trying to do something very hard. Like you don't work directly for Intel. So transitioning into a PM role there might be hard, especially if your wife doesn't want to relocate. And so like, you're trying to move industries and roles and it's kind of like really impossible to do. And your resume looks like you're a salesperson anyway. So how about you try to go to like a SaaS company as a salesperson and then figure it out from there and try to make the internal pivot. So this was like my very backdoor way of trying to get in very intentionally. It took me like 2 years to even get this advice and try it. Pulled it off though. Like went to this small SaaS firm, 100 people, met a senior PM there who's still a good friend of mine today. took me under his wing, saw the stuff that I was building on the side, and his director at the time wanted to hire a UX researcher. They're like, we need a UX research practice. And he's like, well, John talks to customers all the time and he wants to get in the product, look at all the stuff that he's doing. Let's give him a shot. So they brought me in for an interview, landed the role, did that for about 6 months, kind of dove into UX research, UX design, and then made a pivot into product management from there. And haven't looked back. Eight years later, I've worked in a lot of different industries, held a bunch of different titles, and done a lot of fun stuff. So, but to bring it back to the question of like, so that's my journey. How did Path2Product come out of that? Well, when I first got into product and my title changed on LinkedIn, I went from like hundreds of applications with, no response to recruiters reaching out 2 weeks after my title change saying, John, we think you'd be a great fit for this role. I'm like, there's no way I am more qualified 2 weeks into the role than I was 2 months ago. Like similar skill set, right? And so it led me down this research path of like, what do recruiters care about? Why are they interested in people? And it really came down to experience. Like the biggest way for them to hedge their bets and de-risk candidates coming into their pipeline is based on industry experience and years of experience. So being the PM that I am, I'm like, okay, well, if you can't get a job without experience, how can we give somebody experience before they have the job? And that's where the whole thesis of Path2Product came and led me down this road of like, okay, well, are there common threads? Everyone says product management's so different across geographies and industries, and like it's so different everywhere. Well, is that true? Like, is that reality? And so I kind of was pressure testing those assumptions and trying to find like that common thread of things that never change, regardless of where you do product management. And I was like, if I can nail that and teach to that and package that in a way that you can present externally, and like if I can prove that's credible to the people making those hiring decisions, like can we actually like turn this on its head and give people an opportunity to get into product when otherwise they wouldn't be able to without like some internship or some kind of back channel way to get in.
I feel like the number one thing that I've heard, and Santi, you can probably like correct me if I'm wrong here, is everyone's trying to sell like certifications, but hiring managers don't care about certifications.
They don't.
They want to see like actual experience and being able to explain product thinking. And I think that one thing that stood out to us about your program is that you actually teach product thinking and actually coach almost one-on-one that product thinking, because they'll complete a cohort of your program, or you can re-explain that because I'm probably explaining it poorly, but a section or a cohort of your program, and then meet with you to review it, or a member of your team to review it. And that way it's more like, hey, if I have questions, if I'm not like getting it, they can actually talk through it. Whereas a lot of these certifications are either like group based, and then it's like you meet, you kind of go through it, you get a certification and you're done. But how much of that do you like really retain? And I think that was kind of like interesting to me. And Santi, I don't know if you have like thoughts on that before John kind of like validates or goes through his program a little bit more. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I agree though, because we've heard it on this podcast, right? We've had some really fantastic folks in the recruitment and hiring space that are like, certifications, they can be nice to show initiative that you're taking like extra steps to learning and you're dedicated to improving. So I'm not going to say like they're completely useless, but it's just like when it comes to like the actual depth of what they're needing, it is experience. You're completely right. Like that is what they're looking for. And that's what we've heard time and time again from recruiters or hiring managers. They're like, yeah, it's great that you're you're doing those things in addition to your learning, but experience is still going to be like the number one thing, right? Like that is what it is. So yeah, John, if you want to like dig into that a little bit more, we'd love to hear more from your side.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, Megan, at the end of each module, there's 13 modules. At the end, I've started integrating AI to where you get like a instant coaching assessment and feedback, like without having to wait for me, but you do get kind of a congratulations email and you're prompted to set up a one-on-one time with me to coach and review, whether it's live or async. You can get that scheduled. And so, yeah, I want it to be more personal to where there's quizzes and stuff. So the quizzes validate that you understood the information, and there's hands-on assignments to where you're actually doing something, right? So you have to like put your PM hat on, you select a product that exists. So there's actual customers that you can go talk to. I encourage people to use like consumer apps if they're looking to interview family and friends, or if they're in a business setting, like if they're in sales, right? Like talk to your colleagues about Salesforce, right? Pick a product that you have people you could talk to about it put your PM hat on. We teach you how to run user interviews, how to synthesize information, how to use AI to get kind of proxy data sets. You could do some kind of quant analysis, and we go through that. So there's a mix of things that we're doing to try to simulate as close to possible, from just discovery to building a business case for why we should go after this opportunity, to even like how do we plan with stakeholders, how do we formulate a strategy, create a document for strategy, how do we build a PRD, how do we validate that this is the right solution. So we try to go through the whole thing as much as we can and use AI to augment like some proxy experiences that you can't have, right? If you're not actually working with stakeholders, you're not able to work with devs to actually deploy it, but you can go back and forth with AI and a PRD and be like, if you were a senior engineer, what questions would you still have? And like try to simulate as much of that as you can, so that way you're getting those same experiences that we go through in our jobs as PMs. And so it's not perfect, but I would be as bold to say it's probably the closest simulation to what a PM would experience that's out there.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. No, that is really cool because there is a lot of ways you can start doing product management without doing product management.
100%.
I like it. I knew that before, but then when I did the prod ops role and I like started doing that work, I was like, oh well, there is a lot. Like I surprised myself even. And I guess I'm curious, John, when folks are doing kind of that hands-on stuff, like what do you see in students that are more successful? How are they taking these kind of simulations? What are they doing that makes them better grasp the concepts or like be more successful in doing the product management exercises and stuff that you're walking them through?
Yeah, I'd say consistency and rigor, right? The students that have taken their experience in the platform and turned it into a job opportunity, and there's been double-digit students who've gotten into PM roles. And like the hardest part, and I'll get back to your question, but the hardest part for us is like there's been over 1,200 people who've signed up, but product management's not easy, right? And so by its very essence, the program is not like a Udemy course where you can press play, fall asleep, and all the videos run, and you print out the certification at the end and say, I did it, right? Like you actually have to do hard work, and a lot of people don't want to do that. So to get back to your question, like people who spend like a week on each section, a few hours a week, like really being thoughtful and actually trying, and then taking advantage of the resources that we give you, whether it's one-on-one time or the resources on the platform, they do really well. And I've been surprised by people, and I shouldn't be, right? There's so many competent people in the world that I think if they're given the right mentorship, the right structure, like you can pick up and run, right? I think a lot of the irony in the PM space today is the fact that so many people fell into it and had no clue what they were doing and kind of bumped their heads along the way for 5 to 10 years until they finally figured it out. And now they're like, hey, we need 10 years of experience if you're doing this the right way. And it's like, bro, you didn't have it. It's like, anyway, it's funny to me, the hypocrisy of the PM landscape today. But that aside, we are trying to make it to where, I hear this a lot, even when I'm interviewing for roles. It's like, we want people that we don't have to like bring in and train. I'm like, cool. Like, that's exactly what I'm trying to solve. People that you can bring in, you can mold to where what you want them to be, but they have like a very strong baseline knowledge and competency. They know exactly what to do when they get started. Like they're 30, 60, 90. They've already done that in a simulated fashion. Like they know how to get in, assess the market, assess the customers, assess the business, do the research, and figure out like, here's a strategy for what we should be working on.
It's so funny to me. And we talk about this all the time that like a lot of being a product manager is learning on your feet because only 20% of product managers have had official product management training. And so, how many product managers are coming in with 10 years of trained formal experience on how to be a product manager? Especially if you look at today's landscape, like you were saying, with like the age of AI. And it's like, what was product management 6 months ago or 12 months ago is not product management today. And what's product management in one company is not product management in another company right now because some are implementing AI way differently than others. So I think that's absolutely crazy to consider what standards are another person's standards on what product management is. We're all learning on our feet constantly. And I think that that makes a good product manager, someone that can come in and learn on their feet and then be positive during that transition, I think, and not lose their minds, because you will meet some people that cannot handle stress. And that's maybe not a great product manager, because you have to be able to handle stress.
I agree, and I think that's what's so important, right? Is like when I did the research for the common threads, like we often talk about the things that are so different that are on the periphery, right? Like AI, the different ways people implement it, the tools that you have, the type of customers you work with, those are all peripheral to what being a PM is. But at its core, if you understand that I need to create customer value in a way that meets a business objective, if I understand how to do discovery, testing, and validation, and I know how to work cross-functionally to get stuff shipped to production that's coherent to an aligned strategy within the organization, like you can boil it down to the essence of those things. And if you can come back to those first principles of like, this is what I need to be focused on, then you're enabled to like push back and say, okay, that's great that you want an AI strategy, but like, what is the actual value we're creating? How can we monetize that? And are we creating enough value to monetize it? Or are you going to lay off 30% of the company because we didn't get to figure that part out first?
Yeah.
Ooh, good question. Yeah, those are the questions we should be asking, honestly.
So that's the PM's job.
Yeah. And that's where I think we're seeing I think there's a lot of pushback from executive leadership on the PM role, almost like saying that product managers aren't doing work correctly because product managers want to do those foundational principles instead of just ship shit.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's all, and that's all you see on LinkedIn too. Is we can ship so much faster, and it's like, okay, great. So we've still never solved the alignment issue. So we're still shipping at breakneck pace, but the product marketing team is marketing to an audience that isn't the audience we're building for, because we never actually made that connection and collaborated with them on that. And then sales is selling to whoever because they have some type of revenue goal. And then I'm wondering, why am I getting this pressure from the CEO to build this feature when that has nothing to do with our strategy? Right? That's a little preview to what the product market gap is all going to be all about. The book coming later, but we've still never solved that fundamental problem. But yet we want to ship faster. When instead of taking a step back, we can say, okay, AI enables us to ship faster, so we now have more time, and we have bought ourselves time by using AI to actually do the discovery work. So instead of realizing the leverage you have and saving time on the shipping side, on the development side, and using that leverage to actually do the work of value validation in what we're building, they're just like, keep doing more of the same faster. It's like, well, you're going to have the same problems that you've always had.
It's so crazy to me. It's like the number one thing I hear from teams that I talk to in my fractional business is like, oh, well, we need more pipeline. We need more this. We need more that. But they don't go back to the fundamentals. And that's like basic ICP alignment or like just like small things, right? Like, do you even drive value with your product?
100%.
Like, are users finding value? Like, come on, like these are small things. And I think like they get so caught up in, all right, we have a little tiny like tidbit of product market fit because we had like X amount of people sign up, or we launched on Product Hunt. And so we got this influx of users, or we got featured in a newsletter. We got an influx of users. And so we're like popular now, right? But none of those people even had anything to do with their ICP. Like it just did. None of them were even ever going to sign up, or none of them were ever going to sign or to pay if they weren't actually associated with their actual target ICP. I see that all the time. And I think that that's just where a good product manager is really critical. And I think teams just don't hire a product manager early enough. But we're seeing a switch there, I think, where I think Steve talked about this a little bit, where if you have a good PE firm, they have hired product managers early before, and they're encouraging hiring product managers early in the process instead of before it was like, until you hit 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 employees, you don't really need a product manager because one of the founders can act as the product manager. We're seeing that shift earlier now because PE firms are like encouraging it. And I hope that continues, because without one, it's just chaos.
And I think that's a nugget of insight for the listener too. I think if you want to truly understand what being a good PM looks like, work for a company that's backed by a private equity firm because they are so profit and revenue centric, more profit than revenue. They're looking for like smaller incremental profit gains, whereas like a VC backed startup is grow at all cost, right? And then that's when you make some of those bad decisions that bite you in the butt later on because you tried to grow top line. You didn't actually figure out how to build a business. And so a lot of PMs want to work for these hyper growth startups with all this equity opportunity, and maybe we'll like magically coalesce and things will come together and we'll get this big payday someday. And cool, if that happens, great. Like you're set up, fine. But if you want to actually learn how to be a PM, go work for a PE backed company because you're going to have the rigor of building business cases, understanding the value, and being actually challenged on what you're building. And I've enjoyed my time as a PM most working for companies that were backed by PE versus like hyper growth VC startups where nothing makes sense and like people are acting reactively to chase whatever and the board is giving pressure. Not my cup of tea, but yeah, that's just my
True.
2 cents
And
on that.
a lot of metrics are, I don't want to say they're manipulated, but they are
Oh yeah,
for VC back firms. A lot of those metrics are incorrect when they are presented to the board with VC back firms just to get that next raise. And I think that can be hard as a product manager when you truly like care about the product that you're building and you want to move those metrics in a positive direction, but it's just like, oh, we'll change those. The CTO will step in and change those for the next board meeting and then we'll just get some money, right? And I think that if you want to move metrics in a positive direction, that can be really, really hard because you want to focus on metrics that matter. And I think that when you're with a VC grow at all costs type of hypergrowth startup, sometimes those metrics that you want to focus on don't get focused on because it's all about what the board wants.
yeah,
And that sucks.
it makes it hard to align for sure.
I did kind of want to like circle back on some stuff regarding the hiring tidbits that we had already touched on a little bit. But John, I'm curious about your students and like what kind of companies or industries or like where are your students seeing success in the hiring process post course completion?
It's been a mix, honestly. Like we've had people get into product ops at LinkedIn. We've had people get into like the IBM program for like coming out of school, getting into their I forget what they call it, but it's like an early PM, kind of like an APM program that they have.
An accelerator or something?
hmm
Yeah.
we've had some get into like nonprofit PM work. We've had some get into like smaller companies, not the big Amazons, Googles, but like we had some of those, but some that get into like the 100 person, 1,000 person type company. So it's been a mix, honestly. And like as I look back on it, I think there's kind of some overlap with the projects that they've worked on of like what they're interested in. Are they more interested in like a smaller B2B firm? Are they interested in like larger consumer firms? And that's typically the products that they gravitate towards that they kind of pick to own as their project product within the program. And yeah, I don't think there's been like a common thread in terms of what type of jobs they've landed. It's been a pretty big variety.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
I'm curious, like you've been doing this for 6 years, right? So I think when we talked, it was like 5 or 6. What has been like the biggest lesson that you've learned through that? Like I feel like because 6 years ago we didn't have the resources that we have now. So what has changed throughout that process for you as the builder, right? The person that built this product.
Yeah.
What's changed throughout that process?
So much has changed. The market has changed. There's always been this constant hurdle of what you mentioned earlier. Is like there's been this promise from big companies. I'll name names, but like Product School is one of the biggest brands out there for certifications. You pay thousands of dollars with this promise you'll get this job, and a lot of people don't. Right? Just at the end of the day, like personally, I went to a small university because I'm like, I'm not going to go put myself in debt, in six-figure debt for the potential promise of having some job that might help me pay this off by the time I'm 50. Like the ROI didn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Where like, if I don't have a guarantee job opportunity, why am I going to invest all these thousands of dollars without a guarantee of return? Right? Not everybody can afford that, especially in today's global landscape, right? And so Actually, building it has changed a lot. Like the first 2 or 3 cohorts that I had go through, it was literally like one-on-one coaching sessions with a slide deck, a lot of slide decks. So I was on like Facebook groups and I'm like, hey, I'm working on this program. Anybody looking to get into PM? Like, would love to coach you and mentor you into the role. And we had a really high completion rate. We had like 80% completion rate of people who actually went through all the modules. And like out of the 80% who completed, like half of those people got jobs. Like in the early days, the conversion rates were like super, super high. But it was also a different time where hiring PMs was a lot less competitive than it is now. And it was definitely an employees market. And now it's definitely an employer's market. And with all the layoffs, you have this influx of talent with a lot of really cool logos by their name on their resume that people jump at and assume that they're good because they worked at this big company. So that's changed a little bit, as well as the tooling, right? So like 4 years ago, I learned about Bubble. So I spent like 2 years like in spreadsheets and like PowerPoints, and I even used like this community tool called Circle, I think it's called at one point,
Yeah.
where you can host courses. And then I learned about Bubble, which is like a full stack no code builder before the Gen AI stuff, and spent 2 or 3 years like really mastering how to build full stack applications, design databases, which was awesome for me as a PM because I got to do like a bunch of API integrations, database design, things that like really helped me in my practice and working with engineers. And that was fun. But now with AI, it's like, okay, now you have all these ways to like build so much faster. And like, how do I integrate AI into this thing that makes sense? And so now like I'm able to do things on the platform that I didn't think I ever would be able to do. And there's like a whole lot more that I can do with it, to the point where like there's probably a lot of the one-on-one coaching stuff that takes my time that I could probably automate using like an AI agent to basically do what I was doing on my behalf, and I can lower the price and make it more accessible and help it scale faster. So there's so many different like ways to look at it, right? Because I'm not looking to be a millionaire, billionaire off of this platform, but I am looking to provide this opportunity at scale. That's always been my goal, right? Is to help people at scale who want to be helped and want to take the time and effort to actually achieve their goals. So a lot's changed, but it's been a fun journey and kind of learning through it, and it's given me an opportunity to put my practitioner hat on in ways that I don't get to do in my full-time job, and like really own it as the real CEO of the product, right? Actually, so
The phrase that we all love and hate at the same time, right?
exactly.
I think that's so important though. Like with this being like kind of the age of the builder,
Hmm.
there's like this mix of perception around it, in my opinion, that building can kind of dilute your focus as
Hmm.
a product manager. But I personally feel like I'm on the other side of perception that I think it makes you stronger product manager because you see more of the full circle
Hmm.
that comes with building. I think you when you make a change, you know that you have to let people know, and like
Hmm.
there's just more of the full circle of being a founder makes you a stronger PM in my perception, my opinion, whatever.
Agreed.
And I'm wondering, like 6 years of building this product, like you have to have become a stronger PM through that process. I can only imagine how it's made you better at your job.
100%. And I think one of the cool things is I've never worked for a consumer company. I've always worked in B2B my entire career. And so having a consumer product that I built, I've learned that one, consumer's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But I've also learned like a lot of other really good lessons about it too, and in terms of like how important go to market is. I've had people on my podcast that have talked about it, and I think that lesson is just being reinforced over and over. And I think that's why a lot of my passion comes into this book that we're writing, and like the partnership between PM and PMM. And if you don't have a product marketer, why you have to wear that hat as a PM and have that competency. Because if you can't answer those questions we talked about earlier, of like, who are you building for? What are you building for them? What value does it create? And how much can you charge for it? Like those are 4 questions that like on the surface seem really easy, but if you don't have that nailed down, and if that's not well understood throughout the organization, you're going to see things crumble and misalign. And it's just going to have a ripple effect as you grow and try to scale and try to expand into adjacent markets. It's like if that foundation isn't there, you're screwed. And so, like, I think lessons like that I've learned over and over again through building this, to the point earlier about like my own technical competency and becoming a better partner to my engineering counterparts. And I think like the empathy you build for the sales team, for customer success. When you have to wear all those hats and you kind of like feel it, I think it makes you a better partner and more empathetic to like what other people in the organization are going through in your full-time thing.
Yeah, and especially to your point earlier where, like, folks are landing in different industries and different companies and, like, what they're drawn to, and if folks are drawn to smaller startups, you're gonna wear multiple hats, and we can obviously say, like, I'm sure some of it, yeah, it's not a PM's job, but when you're working within a company, I did it, like, my first, like, real tech job, I was working in a team of, like, 20 people. I was doing product marketing, and design. Like, like, it's just that's just the name of the game, so
Hmm.
it was great because I learned a lot. If I had to restart my career and do it all over again, I would do it all over again. Like, I actually learned so much and thought was so important, but it's something that you might have to do depending on where you go and what companies you're drawn to and what you wanna work on. It's just one of the realities. It's that whole concept that we had a guest say one time. It's like, live your reality, right? There's always gonna be things that's, like, ideal or this is the best practice way or, like, this is, like, how it should be done. Sometimes, though, there is just that element of you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
That just it's life.
absolutely.
For sure. I admire that though a lot. Like you've been building for a long time. How do you balance like the workload though of like building and then work at the same time?
Well, that's the good thing. Owning the platform, you can kind of like pick and choose when you work on it. And the good thing about like building it in Bubble is it's so fast to build, right? Like I would dare say outside of like some of the bigger, more technical lift stuff that I could do in Cursor now and some other side projects that I'm working on, like most things I can get in back end, front end database design, and I can get it done in like under a half an hour, have it deployed to production, and it's like it's good. So if bugs pop up or I'm trying to implement a new feature, like it's pretty fast to build. And so a lot of it once the product's actually built is marketing, community building. It's really like trying to get that customer acquisition pipeline continuing to go, like get that flywheel going. So how to balance that? I put everything in my calendar. I have a to-do list of like, here's my top priorities for like each, like my day job, my book, my podcast, my side projects. Like, here's all the things. Here's the top priority for each one. And like, let's make sure we get these done every day and dedicate some time to it. But I think it's just trying to be consistent and trying to like use your calendar to your advantage instead of like having people own your calendar for you. And just a quick note for any early career professionals or mid-career professionals who haven't figured this out yet. If you block your calendar for you, other people can't block it for you. So do with that what you will.
I feel like the calendar tricks that I learned at my first not my first startup, but the startup that I worked at after that where I was like employee number 7, it was like all in from day one. I feel like that's where I really learned to own my calendar. And like the CEO was so supportive, like anything you want to do like on your own time can also be on your calendar. So if I like left for 3 hours in the middle of the day, just block it. You know what I mean? So I just felt like that was my calendar. Like I could own my calendar no matter what. That's where I really learned to like own my calendar at that job. And I feel like that has changed my entire ability to just like really put anything I need to on my calendar versus before that job. I feel like I would forget if I wanted to do anything outside of work because I was just looking at a work calendar. And it's really game changing once you learn to own your calendar in the correct way and take the time that you need on your calendar as well instead of just saying, oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, someone, grabs a time on your calendar when you're supposed to be at lunch and just accepting that time. I think you have to have a job that gives space for that in order to let that happen for the first time. And then it's really game changing after that.
So I may never get hired again after I say this, but it's kind of been like an over a decade secret of mine. I have always taken an hour out of my actual day job to do some type of professional development. And the reason for that
That's good.
is what do they call us in these white collar jobs that we have? Knowledge workers, right? So if we aren't increasing our knowledge and increasing our ability to use new knowledge, then we're becoming less valuable. So I feel like it's well within ethical bounds to take some time out of my execution of my day job to become better at my day job. And it's always helped me grow, I think, exponentially, take a break from the mundane stuff that I'm doing in my job and kind of get like some diversity in my day and kind of refresh my brain a little bit. So Not everyone might be comfortable doing that, but it's always helped me. And I've always had that mentality of like, if we're a knowledge worker, we should probably focus on increasing our knowledge every once in a while.
What do you use that time for? Can you give some examples?
Yeah. Early in my career, it was, man, I spent so much time on Coursera. I got made fun of because I had this like cubicle and I'd print out all my certificates and I would actually do all the work for Coursera. And I'd have like all the certificates printed. And I remember this like one director of marketing came over one time and he's like, okay, we get it. You study a lot. But
Coursera too, honestly, I do. Coursera is great. I did my first foundation certification through there, and it was actually really good.
100%. There's a lot of great material there. But yeah, it was all about like, how can I gain knowledge quickly, contextually? Like, what are stuff that I'm working on contextually that I can apply right away? I mean, I remember early on in my career being a software partnerships manager and having this client who was like, so what are your KPIs for the year? And I'm like, 23, never heard of this acronym before. And I'm like, too scared to get on Google and like start typing away. And she's like, yeah, like your key performance indicators. And when she spelled it out, I'm like, okay, I know enough to be able to say like, okay, what is that? And like, what are our goals for the year and stuff like that. But to me, it was like, I had so much to catch up on. I was like this little country kid from the South who fell into a high tech job working for Intel. And I'm like reading white papers all the time. So for me, it's always been like this almost, not a complex, but like this understanding that I didn't come from like this Harvard, Stanford engineering degree type of background, right? So I always have to like continually increase my knowledge and kind of have a chip on my shoulder all the time. But later on in my career, it was just being hyper specific about like what are my gaps, what are the things I need to work on, or some of it's just like mental health stuff, right? Like I need to take a break from what I'm working on, and this side project gives me a lot of joy and I'm learning stuff as I do it. I'm learning new tools, I'm learning new ways to research and figure things out, and so it's like exercising a different part of my brain and giving me a break from this other thing that like is taxing my brain. And so I've used that hour a day sometimes that way, but it always goes back to like, this is making me better in some kind of way. It's not like I'm on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or something for an hour. It's like I'm actually doing something productive, even if it's not like executing, because at the end, it's going to culminate into me being a better employee, being a better professional for the organization that I'm working for.
Don't hate on YouTube. There's YouTube University.
No, that's fair. I meant like cat videos and stuff like that.
University of YouTube. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are, whether they realize it or not, I think that's a little more like normalized now. Even if they're not taking like a specific hour out of their day, especially in the age of AI, myself, my team, we often are like looking at like articles or we're like reading something or we're thinking, how can we make this work for us? How can we bring this back to our team, help us be more like efficient or accomplish like whatever goal we're working on? Like, I think a lot of people are actually doing that. They're just not realizing that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's something, to your point though, as knowledge workers, that's, something we need to be doing. We need to be increasing the knowledge. And we are, especially right now where technology is just going crazy. We all are doing it, whether we realize it or not. But I think to your point, what's kind of nice, I've never done like that necessarily. Like I've taken time to be like, okay, I'm going to take a few minutes, like read this article or like do this thing. But I think it might be even for folks that's like, hey, just take 15 minutes and like watch a video about the way someone's using technology in your industry to do XYZ or something. Like maybe it is worth time blocking if they're not comfortable with an hour, 15 minutes, and just learn something new and think about it. And maybe next week or the week after, when your teammates are like, hey, we need to figure out this thing, you can be like, I got it. I already know because I took some time to learn it. That's actually cool. Yeah, I'm curious for the listeners if folks do that as well. If you do, let us know what your learning hacks are because we'll share them.
Feel like that was like something I did for studying for my PMP and my PMI ACP. I did that for both of those exams, but my company was supportive both times. So I feel like that was a great space to study for those exams because that was something that I just needed. Like, I needed to force myself to take the time to study for them. And both times I was working at startups. So it's like you're always really busy. And it's like if you don't force yourself to take the time to do it, I think when I was studying for my ACP exam, I would get up at like 5 a.m. in the morning and I would study like an hour before work. And sometimes I would get off like an hour late or early and just like stay at my desk studying for that extra hour and just take quizzes. So I think it would just like sometimes you just need to force yourself to do it in like a normal space that you would normally like work versus once you leave that space, there's distractions.
Mhm.
There's like family, there's animals, right? There's the outside world. There's all the fun stuff that you can go do. But if you're in like a normal space, like John, like you're saying, you isolate that hour, you're already at your desk. What are the things that you could keep learning from your desk? And I think that really helped me, is being like forced on my computer to take those quizzes, because it felt like I was still at work. And once I left that environment, I wasn't really motivated to keep doing that.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
Yeah, that is a really good pro tip. I think even like for folks like finish your workday and you want to like sit at your desk for an extra half hour or something and just want to learn something or do something. I have found success in doing that. To your point, if I leave, I also just am like, okay, deuces, like we're
Done.
like
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm done. But if I'm like I get something done, I will come back to my desk because let's say I go have supper and I help with bedtime or something, and then it's like, okay, no, I need to lock in for a minute. I'll come back to my desk and sit because I've trained my body obviously over these years to be like, this is where work happens. You're going to sit and work now. So it's another pro tip. Maybe stay at your desk an extra half hour after a work day every once in a while, or like come back to your desk, like get in the vibe. That could be another thing that helps people get back into that groove.
Yeah.
I do want to have a question about your book. So I had talked to a friend earlier this year. He's another fractional leader. And he called a book. He was encouraging me to write a book. So I've kind of like noodled on it, but I haven't really decided to do it. He called a book, I think it was a 10,000 word business card. That's what he referred to the book as. He said a lot of people will write a book to like have as an alternative to a business card, because it's just like, I'm the author of that book, right?
Mhm.
And it's like easier to be able to refer to that as like a business card. I'm like chopping that up very poorly, but I guess I would like to ask, like, what was your journey to deciding to write a book? And like, where's the inspiration coming from?
I've always loved to write. So people may not know this now, but I used to be an extreme introvert, and like writing was how I expressed myself. And then I got to college and someone convinced me to be a college cheerleader, and there went the introversion, and like couldn't afford to be anymore. So I don't know.
Are there pictures from this time?
There's like YouTube videos, pictures, you name it. You could find it. It was fun. It's a good time.
Okay.
A lot of we could jam about when we're not recording. But but yeah, so no, I've always loved to write. Short stories, poems, like English class was my thing back in the day. And I always wanted to write a book. And then like life happens. I actually got back into reading early in my career. I saw this LinkedIn post and it was like the world's richest people read like at least a book a month, or it was something like that. And I was like, oh, well, then I should probably read. And it's like I hadn't read it since high school on like books that are random books. So it was actually that challenge to myself. I was like, I'm going to read 30 leadership books this year and like just really hone in on that. And I noticed a gap in like what the leadership book material didn't talk about. And I'm like, this is actually really important. And so my first book was Great Leaders Always Follow. It's under my middle name, Rob Fontenot. So if you look it up, it's not John, you see Rob. But it was really like a research based book about like how every leader follows something or someone and kind of a mix of things. And so like it was every chapter is great leaders follows fill in the blank. So it was really fun. But as I've grown in my career and I've had my own thoughts that are backed by a lot of experiences and not just like early career research based stuff, I've written a couple more. This is going to be the first one that I've co-authored, which is fun. So there's a product marketer. Her name's Daria Love out of Poland. She's pretty popular on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow her, go follow Daria Love. She has a lot of great PMM content she puts out there. But we're working on this together, and we both saw the same problems. We were both kind of talking about the same thing on LinkedIn. I asked her to come on my podcast. We had a really good conversation, and then like I'm getting the itch to write a book again. I'm like, we should write a book about this. And so I asked her, like, hey, would you co-author this with me? And she agreed to. And so it's really fun because now we're gonna like do the PMM thing, but for a book, and take a book to market and treat it like a product. And so it's been a lot of fun so far. But the shared experience that we have in our careers is that like a lot of times PMs complain or PMMs complain. There's multiple complaints, but the PM complaint is my roadmap keeps getting derailed because sales in the B2B context has this deal and the head of sales needs to hit this number. And so you go to the CEO and the CEO comes to me and says, I have to go build this feature. And I'm like, but that's not even who I'm building for in the first place. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's a big contract. And then things get off the rails because you start building for everyone, and that means you're building for no one. And you lose the product market fit you initially had. And that seems to be like a trend over time as you try to scale a company. And so as we kind of talked about this, we're like, well, it's interesting. You have, before you have product market fit, there's a gap, right? Like you don't know what product to build for what market, what value it's going to create. But once you find product market fit, you're not done, because eventually you're going to want to scale or expand. And at that point, there's gaps that come up, whether it's internal alignment or the product isn't being built intentionally for the right market that you're trying to expand to. And so we really want to talk about that problem of like at different stages of the company, pre initial product market fit and post initial product market fit, what are some of the market, product, and internal alignment pieces that you need to get right to make sure you maintain product market fit through these stages, and how to avoid the product market gap that happens so often that causes so much frustration for us as product managers and as product marketers. And then at the end, like our goal really is to help the product function, PM and PMM, understand how they need to partner, why they should partner, how to lead up in the organization and get buy-in. And then hopefully leadership reads it and understands the role that those two functions play, and why alignment across leadership and the product development and go-to-market functions need to be aligned to avoid some of these pitfalls and gaps. So really, it's
Okay.
the experience of that that's inspired us to write this book. And yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
Is your main audience going to be like founders for this or PMs and product marketers?
Yeah,
So
who's your ICP?
there's actually like 4 primary ICPs, which seems like a lot when you're trying to focus, but if you think about it, like founders are one, because when you're founding a company, you need to be able to figure out how to find product market fit and like what goes into that, right? And so there's going to be a chunk of the book that like only that small chunk matters to them for that point in their lives. But once they find product market fit and they go to scale a company, now the rest of the book applies to them, right? And so for the rest of the market, you're going to have PMs and PMMs who are either in startups or not. And so there's going to be, it's almost like a playbook slash workbook where depending on where you are or where your company is, there's going to be parts of the book that apply to you at that point,
Yeah.
right? And so reading the whole book will be informative, but it's definitely going to be broken up to where like you can go and find the section that applies to you. And it's like, if you're experiencing these symptoms, here's the problem and here's how you go fix it. So it's really supposed to be for like
For sure.
diagnostics and repair, to put it in like a mechanical term.
I love that. Well, it's exciting. I think that totally makes sense. I think it's really interesting to see the journey of like everything can be put back to like identifying a pain point and then deciding to solve that with building some sort of product, regardless of what that product is. And I think it's really interesting. The more people I talk to, just like how those ideas come to light and then what they decide to do about it. And in this digital age, it's really fun to hear like books still being considered. I know Erin's also writing a book right now. And there's a customer success leader that I follow that she's writing a book and like dropping tidbits of her book weekly, which is really fun to like read little tidbits of her book. So I love like the idea of just this thinking differently about some of these pain points, and just the solution isn't an app. I like that this solution isn't a vibe coded app, and that we're like trying to think differently and trying to like solve those still through like books. I'm a big book reader. I think I'm like on my like 26th book this year. I love reading. So to your point, John, I think it's really important to continue reading. I love fiction books too, though. So I'm not just reading like nonfiction. So
Right.
highly recommend incorporating some fiction.
I audio when I'm driving around, like, but if I get physical books for like the what my daughter calls the boring stuff that I like to read.
This is gonna mess the whole flow up of the episode, but I had a question earlier I was itching to ask. Have you, when you're working with your students in your course, I know we talked about this ages ago now, but I just want to know, have you been coaching one of them that had like a really tough situation in their day job trying to go through one of the exercises in the course? What was the craziest one that you had to help coach through?
I'm trying to think, because there's been some that like they would ask about how to handle certain situations in their day job when they weren't in product management. But I've also had graduates from the program who have gotten into product management who come to me and ask me, they're like, you didn't go over this in the program. And I'm like, well, like you can't you can't solve for every stakeholder personality problem in a course program, right? So I've had some interesting scenarios like that where it's like, yeah, that's really tricky, and trying to give advice that is so contextual, right, to that organization, that person. There's been some tough ones like that where it's like, if they like, here's how I would handle. I've always couched it. Here's how I would handle it, and this is why I would handle it this way. It might be a little more bold or aggressive, and so take that with a grain of salt. Or I'm a lot less introverted in the sense that, like, if I see a problem, I'm going to address the problem. And so Utah being a very passive aggressive culture state has probably caused some issues in my career, but that's fine. Uh, I'd rather just like call the problem what it is. And so I've definitely had some situations like that where it's like people have gotten into products and now they're experiencing very specific problems that they come to me for advice for. That I probably won't get into specifics on that, but yes, there's been some very interesting discussions come up with some students to the program.
Yeah, is there like a common thread that are happening here with the folks that got into product management and they're coming back to you and they're like, I don't know how to handle this situation. Is there like a common theme that it's happening in more than others or
I'd say this is what I'll say. The common theme is that a lot of time we talked about the peripheral issues of product management. A lot of times people let that distract them, right? Because I've gotten distracted by it too, where it's like, oh man, this is complex. I've never done this before. Like, this is like, what's going on? And I have to remind myself to take a step back and ask myself some basic questions, like, who are we trying to solve the problem for? And like just thinking first principles. Like, what is the problem? How are we framing the problem? Like, what steps should I take here? What research has been done? What assumptions do we have? And like kind of go back to the roots of like what the product discipline is, and not let all this peripheral stuff distract me. Because it can be overwhelming if you let some of the nuance of your environment kind of like throw you off your game, right? And so I think it's been a lot of that. It's been the peripheral stuff that trips people up and says like, okay, well, there's a very specific scenario or um, a very difficult stakeholder or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, let's take a step back and let's walk through the process of like, well, what's been done, what hasn't been done, what conversations have been had, what hasn't. Like, what did you do 2 weeks ago in preparation for this? Do you need to go back and do something that you haven't done? And so it's just walking people through like just kind of resetting the thinking and not just getting, I guess, caught up in the situation.
I think that totally makes sense. And I could see how they would feel comfortable confiding in you if they were running into a difficult situation, if they had gone through your modules and your coaching and things like that. Like if they had run into a difficult situation, even after becoming a PM, I could see you as like a trusted source, especially because I feel like if you're running into something difficult internally, sometimes it's better to seek help outside
Mm-hmm.
of the organization, right? Because it's someone you can vent to or trust.
Yeah.
And so even if that's not necessarily the best way to give product feedback, it may be the best resource they have in the moment to like vent or share,
No,
if that makes sense.
it's so true. I've always heard the advice of like have a mentor inside of the company and then have mentors outside of the company, because there are going to be certain things that unfortunately, like, we can't trust everyone fully in politically charged work environments. And so if you can have a neutral third party that you could bounce stuff off of without the political backlash that you might realistically face inside of an organization. I worked for a company where I was being gaslit pretty bad, and I like had a bit of a spiral and like just trying to figure out like what was I doing wrong. And come to find out, like, I was being used as a scapegoat for stuff that had nothing to do with me. But it impacted me quite a bit. And so I went to like our chief marketing officer, the VP of product who initially hired me and was my hiring manager for a while. And I think some of like my concern and frustration got back to other people. And so like tough lesson on my part of like who to vent to or express certain things to, sometimes is better left to a neutral third party than somebody inside of your company, because it might have unintended consequences as a result of it.
Yeah,
So
so true. Well, like I said, I at the beginning, I know we kind of just let the conversation flow, but is there anything we didn't get to that you wanted to make sure we cover? I know we talked a little bit about your book and Path2Product, but was there anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure we get to?
I don't think so. I mean, if anybody wants to connect, I'm always happy to like to jam on product stuff. Happy to be a mentor if anybody needs that or has questions. If anybody wants like product feedback, if you're working on side projects, I love doing that too. So reach out to me. I'll give you my email to put in the show notes if you want. So if somebody wants to reach out to me, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not many Fontenos out there, so just type in John Fontenot and you'll find me.
Love that. That's like the pro of having like a unique name. So I'm like, listen, you're gonna find my name. You're
Well,
gonna find it.
the
Like
ir-
it's gonna.
the irony is like there's a ton of Fontenos and they're in Louisiana, but there's very few on LinkedIn. So it's like oil and gas industry,
Funny.
not like LinkedIn type of ICP. So yeah,
That's so
Perfect.
funny.
yeah.
Do you have a newsletter or anything like that that you work on, John?
I had a blog on Path2Product that there's content up there, but I don't keep it up as well as I should. So you can go find my old content there. The
Okay,
podcast is going to get back up and running though, so I'm probably going to have you guys on the
cool,
podcast here
fun.
pretty soon. But hopefully.
Awesome.
But no, lessons in product management. If you want to go follow the content there, I took a bit of a hiatus for about 8 months, but there's a ton of episodes you can go listen to historically, and there's more stuff on the way. So
Cool. Well, we'll add
Awesome.
all those in the show notes too, assuming those would be good resources for anyone looking to break into product, right?
absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. So we'll be sure to add those. I feel like we should do a spicy question.
Ooh,
We should.
I'm thinking, I feel like I could have a good one. Okay. What certification program for associate PMs is overrated and all associate PMs or PMs looking to break into product should actively avoid?
I feel like I'm setting myself up for a lawsuit here, like a defamation suit incoming. I've already mentioned one. I actually had the CEO of the company on my podcast very early on, and I feel like it's too much money for something that doesn't give you a guaranteed outcome, and it's something you could find on YouTube articles, listening to podcasts. So yeah, I think product school for people who are trying to get into product management is probably overrated because of the price mostly. Good content, and there's great PMs who provide the content on there. So I'm not knocking the content, but for the goal of getting into product management, unless they use, which total miss on their part, if they actually use their network to actually help people make that transition who got the certification more intentionally, I think sometimes it happens, maybe accidentally. But I think there is an opportunity for them to do that. I think right now it's just the investment isn't worth the risk. That's my 2 cents. And I've heard a lot of that from students who have done product school and that have asked about me about my program. And that's always their feedback is, well, do I have a guarantee of getting into? And I'm like, there's never a guarantee. Like you didn't have a guarantee before you sign up here, but this is like 10% of what you paid. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you're also not the only person that's ever said that to us. We've had multiple recruiters share that same feedback that a product school certification doesn't land you a job. And it's also not a program that they think very highly of. And we've heard the same from multiple hiring managers. So I think you're just validating it from a different perspective, I guess, as someone who has a program to help people land jobs. Santi, like, can you validate that as well?
I was gonna say it comes back to the point of like certs aren't gonna get you a job. There's no guarantee with anything, right? Like it's yeah. I have in my some of my sessions I have heard some similar sentiments as well. It's just and it's unfortunate because you know there's these students that are young and hopeful and they're like, I want to put in the work, I want to do this thing, and I want to get a job. But unfortunately, just nothing is a guarantee.
Agree.
That's the painful part of it all.
So
But again, you know, kudos to those folks for trying to learn and develop and grow. But it is just nothing can be guaranteed.
agree. And something I learned throughout my research and like interacting with a lot of aspiring PMs and being an aspiring PM is the fact that like you go on LinkedIn and you look at PMs and you're like, how did they get there? Because you want to answer that question of like, what do I have to do to get into PM? And you see people with MBAs, you see people with product school certifications, and a lot of times people get those credentials after they've been a PM. But it creates this perception of, oh, they have that. So that must be what helped them get into PM. And so I think there's some of that like misperception unwinding that needs to happen to say like, no, that's probably not why they got into it. They probably fell into it like 90% of the others. And somebody like in their company was like, hey, I think you'd be good at this. I don't know what it is, but okay, let's go try it. Like that's what mostly happens. So yeah, as much as I can like evangelize to aspiring PMs that that's not the path and like I understand the misperception because I've seen it myself when I was an aspiring PM. I just want to help people have that understanding that you don't have to invest all this money. It takes more and different things than that.
That's interesting perspective. I never thought about the perception that like things like your LinkedIn could give, because like Aaron is a great example. He's always had this very strong ideology that if you're doing the job, give yourself the title.
Mhm.
And he's pushed it many, many times on this podcast. And so I think a lot of people may be doing that on LinkedIn, and I completely agree. And so I'm wondering, like, as people do that more, if you're doing the job, you may be giving yourself the title, but maybe you weren't hired to do that job initially. And so it wasn't necessarily how you got that job. Maybe you were given that job through a different transition, but you ended up doing that job. So I could see how that might look to somebody who was thinking you like just got hired as a PM, but that's not exactly what you ended up being hired for initially, if that makes sense, because you ended up being a PM there 2 years into it, but you necessarily weren't, I don't know, hired to be a PM. I don't know if that makes sense the way I'm wording it, but I could see
No,
how
yeah,
that perception could look to somebody.
100%. And I think there's like, I remember a couple companies ago, the VP of product like jokingly came up to me because my title that I was hired as was senior PM, but I had a couple
Mm-hmm.
reports and I was over a pretty large scope. And I'm like, what I'm really doing is group product manager work. And so I changed my title on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's what I'm actually doing. And so one day he was like putting together a standing up desk, and he made some comment about like a group PM and how we don't have that title at the company. He's like, but it probably is more appropriate. So like he was really cool about it. But honestly, like regardless of what you're hired as and your title, I'm a big advocate of that too. Like put the title of what you're doing, like make it make sense, because really LinkedIn, your resume, it's just marketing. As long as you're not lying, like if that's what you're doing and the company just doesn't want to change your title because of some arbitrary reason of what titles they give internally, put what's marketable to the future that you want, right?
And that's the tricky part too, because we were hearing from some folks that folks are lying about being a
Yeah.
product
And
manager,
you can't do that.
associate PM. No, you can't, guys. Like, don't lie on your resume, people. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Please don't lie.
If you're vibe coding an app and you have like a name for it and a little logo and you want to make a LinkedIn page, this is a great hack, right? So make a LinkedIn page, make a logo for your vibe coded app, make it a company, like a company page, and put yourself as like PM of that company that you invented because you're vibe coding the app. Like that's totally legit. Like that's fine. That's real experience that you're getting. And as long as you're practicing the actual art of product management and getting that experience, why not market it? But don't lie about it. Don't do that. Product ethics are
And actually, so speaking of the hacks there, what's your most unhinged but efficient PM hack? And I don't even know, like, this question just came to me. I don't even have like the full question word thought out, but like, what's like something you do that like some people might be like, that's wild, but it's helpful for you, or like something you're doing. It could be, I don't know, you do a handstand and you get inspiration for a new product line. I don't know, like just like what's something crazy that like, just helps you as a PM.
it's nothing earth shattering, but like I read a lot of nonfiction, and I think there's so much that I've gained over the years from reading books, even older books, right? Like Jeffrey Moore has a whole series that most people are familiar with. His book about the I forget what it's called now, but like the gap to go from like to get over product market fit. I forget the name of the book.
It's
Anyway,
all right.
but look up Jeffrey Moore. He has a bunch of good books. But like I remember reading Inside the Tornado on an airplane ride. It helped me like understand historically how certain companies leveraged partnerships to like fill in gaps in their overall offering until they were able to get the leverage to build the thing themselves. And I'll give you an example, right? Like Apple forever used Intel chips in their Mac because they were focused on the devices, but eventually they started making chips and they cut Intel out. And now they own the whole ecosystem, right? And this has been a strategy that's been done multiple times by a lot of big companies. And so when I was at Lendio working on the embedded lending strategy of how do we get this embedded loan marketplace into enterprise SaaS vendors, I had this like very audacious vision to go from origination, like the actual loan application, to servicing. And people inside the company freaked out. They're like, you expect us to do servicing? I'm like, not tomorrow, but there's third parties that do servicing. And we have the leverage to go to our lender network and convince them if they want this channel of acquisition like customers that they could acquire through our network, we have the leverage to say you need to use this tool. And we had seen this play out many times where it's like, well, they're actually willing to do a lot of API work to get access to this new customer channel that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. And they're willing to actually make automated decisions within a certain credit box that they wouldn't have otherwise done because they get access to this free channel of customers. That's a big leverage for us. And
Yeah.
anyway, big dispute internally that didn't go anywhere, but like was trying to take what I learned from this book and how other very successful companies had actually formulated strategy and apply it to my situation. I thought it was really good, but ended up getting the boot from there, so it's fine.
No, I love that. I think I've learned a lot from nonfiction books as well, and I think that they do a lot to inspire you quickly. And I think that that comes from like reading nonfiction. I really like
100%.
Brene Brown's books. I read a lot of her books, and I feel like when I read those books, there's like a lot of mindset shifts that happen after I read those books. And same thing with like just a lot of startup books. I love to read startup books for some reason. There're just like tons of those. So I think it's really important to keep up with nonfiction books here and there, mixed in with some fiction, of course.
Gotta have some fun.
Absolutely.
Gotta have some fun. Gotta transport yourself to another time. I feel like that's why I like fiction books. I like fantasy books and things like that.
Agreed.
Sorry, Santi. I feel like I said that and then I was like, what did Santi say? And then I got distracted. My
No,
brain
you're
just
all
like
good.
oofed.
Hey, we're just vibing over here. Yeah, we did great. And I think there's some great insights that came out of this. I really do.
Same.
Like lots of really good insights. I'm very excited for this. I think I covered everything that I wanted to from my end.
Same. I feel like we could have talked about your students and like Path2Product the whole episode. So are you also helping in the like transition process, like post after the students complete their course?
That's kind of the next phase of the company, right? Is making those direct connections to create those direct opportunities. I would love to work with organizations that are either looking for that pipeline or want to have like an exclusive pipeline of like, hey, here's some problem sets we want students to work on. Almost in a similar vein of like a hackathon, where like today in the AI landscape, you have companies that sponsor hackathons, but similar thing of like a problem hackathon of like, hey, here's this customer problem. Let's see what your students could do with it, and maybe we'll give like the best portfolio and an interview, right, for an opportunity to come in as like a junior PM. Like that would be cool for me. I'd love to see those opportunities come up, and that's kind of what I'm starting to proactively work on, is that direct B2B connection.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. And we'll have your email in the show notes, like you mentioned. So that's good to know in case anyone wants to reach out about that. That's really cool. I love that.
Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of the Product Pivot. We had a blast chatting with John. Lots of insights dropped. As Meg mentioned, we're going to have the details and the emails and all that fun stuff in the show notes.
Anything you want to say, John?
For any of the listeners who are yelling at me like I would have been doing when I couldn't remember the name of the book, Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. So it came to me. But anyway, that's it.